Saca con Jiménez. Con tranquilidad, sí, qué linda pelota filtrada. Y esto debería terminar con el empate. A ver cómo la define. Le da León. Gol. Gol de Cerro Porteño. Un León.
So the first ever signing of the Amorim era from back in January, but made official this summer, has caught headlines for how he believes he will be a first-team player for Man United, which begs the question, who is Diego León, and does his ability back up his words? Guys, thanks for joining me in what will be my last upload for a while. I'll explain at the end of the video, we'll leave that for later, but let's get into this one now, shall we? Let's get right into it. And to get the insight we need, I've brought along someone who is very much in touch with Paraguayan football.
Hi, my name is Roberto Rojas. I'm currently working as an associate editor for ESPN FC, but obviously I've done so many things over the last 10 years, I would say, working and kind of promoting the game of soccer. Obviously from my background, for those that know me, I'm Paraguayan American, so obviously I have a really strong tie to Paraguayan soccer as a whole.
As if you needed more convincing, how about his podcast?
Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English, where we talk about everything going on in Paraguayan soccer, from the players, the teams that are participating, everything abroad, and mentioning of Paraguayan football. So yeah.
And he's also a really nice guy. Had a great chat with Roberto, but this isn't a Roberto profile, of course. Let's get into Diego, who, as mentioned briefly, has been speaking with a ton of confidence since arriving at Manchester United. As he said, quote, "Everyone thinks I'll go out on loan, but I don't have that mindset. I'm going to kill it in preseason, and within 1 or 2 games, I'll already be playing with them." So is this confidence just run-of-the-mill Diego Leonism? Has he kind of become known for having these kinds of statements?
No, I have not seen that. I definitely didn't even see that when he was at Cerro Porteño, for sure. I always looked at him as a bit more humble, a bit more down to earth, just because of his background and that sort of thing, taking advantage of the position that he was in, obviously playing at a big club like Cerro Porteño, which is regarded as the second biggest team in the country, and for being so young. But for him to make those declarations and to say, yeah, I'm ready to impress, I think it's, typical teenage rebellion sort of cockiness and whatnot, which, I respect. I think that's something great, because it's not always the same cookie colored thing of, oh, I'm really happy to be here, looking forward to doing what I can do and just hoping that I can play and whatnot. Here is the case of like having that sort of mentality, which, it can go well if it goes well, but can also go wrong at times as well if it doesn't.
So before we get into the player, obviously someone coming in with this kind of demeanor makes you think, okay, well, who is Diego as a person? Roberto mentioned how Paraguayans are typically more humble and have less bravado to them. So does he just back himself? Or is there something in his background that would point to this?
He was born and raised in the place of Iguazu, which is about 300 kilometers from the capital of Asunción. And it's the typical story of like many young boys who dream of being a professional footballer. They come from these very rural and humble backgrounds, and the only way to kind of escape from that sort of adversity is through football. His mother said that when he was a young boy, that family wouldn't have enough money to buy a ball, so Diego would just use any sort of fabric to make like those like makeshift balls. And I think one of the few things that also, going back in sort of this confidence thing, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but at the age of 5, he said that he will play for that club, Cerro Porteño, which he would do, obviously. But the fact that he already had come through that sort of understanding of like, no, I want to play for this team, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, shows that sort of adversity is something you can't replicate. It's not something that you can even teach. It's just there. And so I really respect that from Diego and what led him to become a Manchester United player.
It is the kind of story that you can't really get sick of hearing, right? It's really, really easy to root for someone like this to succeed, because it's not just the case of someone coming from really difficult circumstances that can be found anywhere in the world, but these kinds of stories of a young footballer getting noticed overseas by a gigantic club is even more rare, even more coveted in Paraguay and the Paraguayan diaspora. Diego is the first ever Paraguayan to sign for Manchester United, and while there have been successful Paraguayans in England here and there, they are certainly not as common as some of their South American rivals. So it clearly takes a very special talent in order to sign for Manchester United when you're just 18 years old, well, earlier if you want to count when the deal was agreed when he was still just 17 back in January. In fact, that makes him Ruben Amorim's first ever signing, as I mentioned in the intro. It came before Dorgu, after all. Anyway, with this kind of talent, the breakthrough at Cerro Porteño, the second biggest club in Paraguay, and of which Diego joined at the U14 level, it said, it was bound to happen at some point.
You have to give thanks to Manolo Jimenez, the guy that gave him his debut, and it's a left back too. So, this isn't even the shiny new toy that we get accustomed to. It's like, oh, this is a really good midfielder that knows how to provide assist, or a number 9 that's scoring 30, 40 goals a season, you know, in those like little youth levels. Like, no, this is a left back. So if you are impressing as a left back, then clearly you have some sort of talent there. Because again, those are the positions that are very much not talked about in comparison to like the more attacking positions. But I think for someone like León's case, because of his speed, because of how physical he is, and I think as well, just because he has that sort of eye for goal, because, you know, to score on your first game and to do that from a left back tracking back and having to move forward, I think it proves that he can do something that is very much different from the rest, not like your typical standard Paraguayan defender. And, you know, this is a football, in Paraguay's case, that is maybe a bit more physical, maybe a bit more slower.
We'll get more into his style of play a bit later in the video, but I really like what Roberto was pointing out there. It's easier to catch attention as a youth player if you're scoring a ton of goals, if you're beating a ton of players down the wing on the dribble constantly, or constantly cutting teams open with your surgical passing. With some players, however, these truly God-given talents, they can do a bit of everything, no matter what position they are playing in. And that's exactly what Diego was doing at the youth levels. His ability went beyond his own position.
He was a top goal scorer even in his youth levels. This isn't your traditional left back that's always defending. Clearly, like, he had something in them to say, like, no, this guy could actually assist and attack, and, you know, he could do everything as well.
And that he did. Now, if you were to look at the 2 years that he has been around the senior team for Cerro Porteño, there's the big boom in 2024 where he played a ton in the Clausura, which, like most South American and Central American countries, Paraguay divides their season up into Clausura and Apertura. Clausura being the half of the season from about August until November, December. And yeah, as you can see, over 1,600 minutes divided over 19 appearances and 2 goals in that stretch. Guy scored on his debut, getting the winning goal, and 2 games later, he scored again. So Diego was playing a ton in the Clausura, but jump ahead to 2025 and he hasn't been playing as much. Is that anything to worry about?
So he didn't really play as much this year because he was obviously doing stuff with the U20s, and, you know, he qualified Paraguay for the U20 World Cup for the first time in 12 years, sorry.
All right, so the man has been busy. And if you look at how the qualifying was structured, which is via the U20 South American Championship, he was essentially playing with the national team from January 23rd to February 16th of 2025. And that's not even including the training camps prior. And by the way, all of their qualifying matches were played in that stretch, all 9 of them. And Diego played in all 9 of them. He played every single minute of those matches except for one of them. And even scored the 82nd minute winner against Argentina. But now let's get into the strengths and weaknesses of the guy. One of the things that Roberto spoke of was, of all the aspects of his game, he needs to work on the defensive side of things. Not so much the physical side of the game, as he is fast and he's quite strong for his age as well. But in one-on-one situations, Roberto noted that when isolated, he can sometimes struggle. Thankfully, as noted, he has the speed in order to recover in most situations. But you gotta note, the talent he will be up against in the Premier League, if he is to stay, of course, will more than likely punish him for any mistake in that regard. And as well, for a guy who just turned 18, some composure can be lacking at times, but just as we did with Franco Mastantuono, you gotta ask yourself, okay, is this a weakness of his, actually, or is he just 18, you know? But when it comes to strengths, despite what we just said, he has exhibited quite good defensive awareness, as he isn't caught out of position too often. Now and then, yes. But the main strength he has is absolutely how he contributes to the attack, as he loves to whip in a cross now and then, as well as having a strike at goal, of which he has a very, very powerful left foot. Given his speed, he can glide past defenders, and you can picture how he would thrive as a left wing back in Amorim's system. Remember those videos from when Amorim had his first training session at Man United, and he was making the entire squad essentially run from one end of the pitch to the other in order to mimic how he wants them to quickly get back into their shape when they lose possession? Well, Diego would be able to go through that with no bother, without even panting, as his stamina, as evidenced by the amount of full 90s that he has played, has often been noted by those who watch him regularly. Tons of energy. And naturally, for those of us who haven't watched him play on a regular basis, as someone like Roberto has, a supporter of Cerro Porteño, who does he resemble? He says that he sees Marcelo as his idol, but does he resemble him stylistically?
It's Marcelo. I'm not saying that he's a like for like, and I don't think there's many modern left backs that are, but I think that's sort of the inspiration that many left backs of that sort of mold are taking inspiration, because as you know, Marcelo was fantastic moving forward, but maybe wasn't as strong as he was in defense in comparison to Roberto Carlos, for example. But I think it's that. It's sort of the model that many people are looking at. Alphonso Davies, same thing, just because of his pace, and I think León looks at that sort of thing, and, you know, obviously the strength also comes into that factor as well.
It's always always so difficult to call exactly how a player will develop. We've seen how these things go, but from what Roberto has been saying, a slow approach, one that is perhaps a bit slower than Diego himself would like to see, could be best. But Amorim does have a good track record in promoting and utilizing youth players from back in his Sporting days, so that's certainly a point in favor of optimism for Diego going forward, right?
I don't think he's going to have an immediate impact. I just don't see it. Players can be proven wrong, and Amorim's going to have a closer eye than I ever will, but I just feel like it's so unrealistic. And, this goes to the fans and those as well, even for Paraguayans. They think like, oh, that he's at Man United, great, and that means he'll play. Like, no, it's not like that. We've seen players that have gone to lesser teams, and they don't even get to play immediately from the get-go, especially where he comes from, the age, and just, the position that he's in.
Well, guys, just a quick one here. A big thank you to Roberto for joining me, as well as to Alex for editing this, and actually, as a Man U fan, suggesting this video. Anyways, guys, this is the last video that I'm going to publish for a while because it's baby time. He hasn't arrived yet, but I gotta get things prepared and spend some time with my family. I won't be gone too long, maybe a few weeks, but I'll slowly transition back into full-on production again prior to the beginning of the European seasons, just before. Sound good? So, thank you for all of the support this season. It was a long one. Thank you for allowing me to do what I love. I'm forever grateful to you guys, and I'll see you in a few weeks. Be safe. Love ya. Hit my nose on the microphone.